when you start a business and you launch a business, you have done a lot of groundwork to get that business off the ground. So it's no longer at the small stage. Now you kind of progress to the middle stage. And then ultimately, if you don't know anything about your business, how do you expect a customer to be confident in buying or supporting your business if you don't even know how to structure your things the right way? How much does it cost to even run a business? Like, do you have a storage? You got to pay utilities? You got the Wi-Fi? You got a cell phone bill? All of the overhead. Do you have a staff? Some businesses require a staff where you have to pay people. Yo, what's up, fam? You know what it is. It's your boy, Sebastian J. Sanders. Guys, it's Money Mondays. This is your weekly money, business, and mindset business show, business podcast. Very excited. We're back with season 2. This season is going to be extremely educational. A lot of great information. We're going to do some cool things. Season 1 last year was a great pilot to see what worked and didn't work, but we're back this year. Great topics, great information. But I got a special surprise for you guys that we'll be doing in season 2, and I'm very excited to bring in some special guests. Not your traditional interview style show. What we're going to do is we're going to bring in real life small business owners, entrepreneurs, and we're just going to let them talk about their business. We're going to review their business and do a real life study and evaluation of a business and see how they're going. So stay with me on this journey. Watch, like, subscribe to the channel. Looking forward to having a great season 2 and kicking things off. This week, I am super excited. We got a really good topic this week. I want to talk about how do you price your product and your service for profit and how to stop guessing and start making real life money. First off, the thing I tell everybody, whether this is a client, whether this is one of the students that I teach, somebody part of the Young Billionaires Club, a friend, anybody that's looking to get into business, the one critical thing that you have to understand about business is you got to know how to price your product and your service. I'm going to pause. Give you a second to think about it, let it all soak in, but truly think about the product or the service that you provide and think about your price point. Think about it. And I want you to ask yourself this. If you're pricing off of feelings, you're already losing. And what that means is, let's say you started a t-shirt business and you feel that t-shirt is worth $12 or $15, right? And you've been selling that shirt for $12, maybe $15 for the last 3 to 4 years, but the market has changed. The cost to make a t-shirt, the cost to make that good has went up. The cost to acquire a customer has went up. So now you got to spend more marketing dollars and more ad dollars to go and get the customer. Your competitors are changing, right? Nike, Adidas, and other small business owners who have t-shirt companies, they're, upticking their pricing. So that means you have to uptick your price. But for some reason, you have stayed in the $12 to $15 range. That's because you're doing it based off of your personal feelings, how you feel about the brand. You're already behind the 8 ball. You're already losing. And it's important that you understand, how do I price this? Because if you don't know how to price something, you can lose out on money. You can overprice your business and put yourself out of business ultimately. And then ultimately, if you don't know anything about your business, how do you expect a customer to be confident in buying or supporting your business if you don't even know how to structure your things the right way? So I want to spend this episode, going back to the basics and showing you, how do I price something? I give you guys, some insight on myself. When it come down to pricing, I was really never good at pricing. Maybe until about a couple of years ago when I really realized I was losing out on a lot of potential money, and maybe I overpriced some of the products or the services that I had. And so, for my first few years when we first started the organization, we didn't have a price point on a lot of things. I didn't have a menu sheet. I didn't have a price sheet, mainly at the time because I didn't have anything to sell. I was really just trying to get my name out there. But once I started to build credibility and add things to my name, I had to, put together pricing. And I remember I'm going into these meetings and I'm securing a lot of deals. And I remember business mentor of mine, he told me, he said, well, nobody's pushing back on anything you're saying is because your price is too low. And it hit me because I'm like, nah, I have 100% hit rate on everything. And I realized wow, maybe my prices is too low. Then I had to think about it. I broke it down. How much does it cost for us to put on a workshop? How much does it cost for us to put on a summit? How much does it cost for us to put on, these different events that we do or service or program? And I was realizing we were significantly underpricing in the market, and we were losing because you got to pay your staff. You got to buy supplies, right? You got to make sure you get the students incentives. You got to make sure you pay for gas and food, and then you come out on the bottom line, your profit on top, really little to none. So we had to change our whole structure. So today I want to walk through a 4-step process of what it looks like of how do you price your product or service. Maybe you watching this video, you don't know where to start, you don't know what to do, and you're trying to figure things out, and you're trying to raise your prices, but you don't have a case for it. This is what this video is going to help you. It's going to help you price it. Number 1, research. This is critical. And a lot of us skip the research because we want to take whatever we make straight to the marketplace and we want to just do it and charge whatever we feel like. We're just, coming off stuff out the top of our head. Like, hey, I feel like this shirt is worth $100, so I'm going to charge $100. The market may correct you and say, that shirt is about $60. So now you're $40 overpricing. You're fresh out the market. You don't even have a customer fan base and you're dropping $100 t-shirts and you don't even have a loyal fan base yet. Ultimately, you're going to struggle in the beginning. And then it's going to, make you go in and change your products and change your pricing. And that's why it's important. You got to study 5 to 10 competitors. And when I talk about competitors, I don't mean a competitor being somebody like, if I'm starting a t-shirt brand, the Essentials, the Nikes and Adidas, you want to look at what they're doing from a marketing standpoint and from a business standpoint to see how you can scale your business to get to that level. But when it comes down to pricing, Nike charges based off of what the product is. Because you think about it, some Nike shirts are expensive, some aren't. So you can't necessarily charge what they charge because you don't have that brand recognition just yet. Same thing for Essentials. You can go and get the heavy cotton t-shirt that looks like an Essentials and you can mimic everything that Essentials does, but you're not able to charge that price because you don't have the brand recognition behind it. So when I say study competitors, you want to study medium-sized competitors, not anybody that's super small, but you want to get somebody that's right in the middle because they're either not small, not big, but they're right in the middle. And that's essentially where a lot of businesses start at. We usually start off in the middle. A lot of times you think you start off in the beginning. You usually start off in the middle because when you start a business and you launch a business, you have done a lot of groundwork to get that business off the ground. So it's no longer at the small stage. Now you kind of progress to the middle stage. So you want to study competitors that's, local or regional around you, and you want to see what they're charging, and then you base your price based off of there. I always tell people in the beginning, you have to lose out on some money and spend some money to make some money. And that's completely fine because in the beginning, all things are not profitable. You have to have that mindset as a business owner. The first thing that you want to do in that first stage when you're studying is you want to go and see what the average price is. So if the average price of my competitors is $30 for a t-shirt, you come in and you undercut right around $24, $25. And you're thinking like, well, maybe I'm losing out on that potential $5. But remember, it's all about brand recognition in the beginning. You're not at Nike level. You're not at the Essentials level. You're not at the Adidas level. You're not at those major t-shirt brands level just yet. So you want to come in and you want to undercut just a little bit where you're still making a little on top, but you're not undercutting too much where you're losing so much money. And you want to undercut and you want to come in at about $24, $25 and you want to sell at that rate. That way you're giving yourself flexibility to grow. One day you get to the $30 range and then you surpass and go on and so forth. In addition to that, you want to identify the average market price, and then you want to separate the premium versus budgeted positioning. What that means is the premium cost of a t-shirt is probably a high-level t-shirt. If that premium cost is $75, let's just say, right? And I'm budgeting and I'm trying to figure out what's my budget position. When I'm coming out the gate on my product or service, I don't go for the premium product off the gate. I want to put out something that's good enough to get people in, but I need to reel them in first. Because think about it. You don't go somewhere that you haven't been before and you don't order the most expensive thing. Now, some people do, some people don't, just depends on your tax bracket. But ultimately, the average person that goes out somewhere, this is my first time here and you got a $50 burger versus a $10 burger and I never ate it, I never heard about it, I'm just here trying things out, I'm probably going to go for the $10 burger just so I can see. And if I like it, I'm going to keep coming back. That's the same thing with your pricing. If people like the price in the beginning, they're going to keep coming back. So you want to put out a price that's fair, that's marketable, but at the same time, you want to make your customers who are new, these are new customers, you want to make them comfortable enough to keep coming back. Number 2, you have to analyze the real cost. A lot of us, and when I say us, I always speak from existence when it comes down to business. I didn't know my cost. When I founded Sanders Hand and the first 4 years, we didn't have anything to sell. And I built the Young Billionaires Club program. And then I started to put a pricing on our products and the services. I didn't know my cost of goods. I didn't know what it cost to put on things. I was just freestyling the price. And honestly, I took the price based off of what I seen somebody else do. And I just mimicked the same price. But we had 2 different programs. So you got to know your cost. Like I said, you got to know your business inside and out. Because if you do not, your customers are going to tell you, your investors are going to tell you, the whole market, everything around you is going to tell you don't know your business. You got to analyze the real cost. And this is the strategy. The materials. What materials go into creating that t-shirt, right? Whether that's the blank shirt, whether that's the samples, the production costs, all of that. The labor. What do you pay yourself? Because although you may be paying labor, for the t-shirt company to produce it or whatever. But at the same time, that's the labor, but you also have another labor cost, which is yourself. You're probably packaging, you're probably doing all the marketing, you're creating videos, ads, and all that. So what do you have to pay yourself? What is your hourly wage that you pay yourself from your business? Now, in the beginning, you always probably going to take the least. And that's the thing about being a boss or entrepreneur. You take the least, everybody else gets paid first, and then you come out and get whatever's left over until you get to the point to where you built the business up to be super profitable. Your overhead. How much does it cost to even run a business? Like, do you have a storage? Do you got to pay utilities? You got the Wi-Fi? You got a cell phone bill? All of the overhead. Do you have a staff? Some businesses require a staff where you have to pay people. And then your taxes. A lot of small business owners, entrepreneurs, we don't factor in taxes into our cost. Because in the beginning, we I got to make all the money that I can. I'm not even going to report taxes this year because I'm not making enough money. That's when, that goes back to the video I did last season. That's when you need to just stay hustling. If you're not trying to look at your real cost of materials, labor, overhead, and taxes, and you just want to freestyle and do whatever to make a little money, then you need to be a hustler and stop calling yourself an entrepreneur. And I tell people this all the time. The biggest thing that I think separates hustlers from entrepreneurs, and other people may correct me and they may have their opinions, I think it's taxes. Most time a hustler's not looking to pay taxes, doesn't want to pay taxes, so they skip out on it. A real entrepreneur is looking at the bottom sheet and looking at, okay, how much do I owe in taxes at the end of the year? And they add that on top of their stuff. So you got to know your costs. You got to know your materials, your labor, your overhead, and your taxes. And let's just throw out a number. If I got this t-shirt brand and my materials is $5 material, my labor is $50 in labor. Overhead is an extra $100, and then my taxes is 10% of that. So I'm going to add my first three up. I add my labor, my materials, my overhead, and then I do my taxes, right? And I multiply the first three times my taxes in the decimal format, and I get that number, and then I look at that number, and I look at it like, okay, I break that down into quantities. I take that, and I break it down into quantities, and I see how much quantities of t-shirts that I have, and that's how I figure out my bottom line, and I figure out my pricing, right? And every business is going to look different. So that example that I just went through, it may not apply to your business, but for the most part, all businesses have to look at this same equation. You take your materials, your labor, your overhead, you multiply each, materials times labor times overhead, get that number, and then not multiply. Don't do that. That you'll be taxing people too much. Let me run that back. You take your materials, labor, and your overhead, you add that up, and then at the end you multiply it by the taxes. And if my taxes is 25, I go 0.0025, multiply that times those three numbers added up, come out with that number, and then I break it down into quantities and see if I come out to $17 or $18 a t-shirt, and then I just add a little extra on top to get my point. Most entrepreneurs forget their overhead. A lot of us forget our overhead. We don't think about all the things that factor into operating a business. Do not be that person that forgets the overhead, because if you forget the overhead, you can't pay anybody, you can't run ads, you can't, get your utilities and all those other things. All of those things make up the business. Overhead can be very expensive in business, right? But that's why it's all about growth, because you get to a point to where you're profitable, you don't have to worry about the overhead being as expensive as it is. But a lot of us small business entrepreneurs, we start off and we forget the overhead. We want to scale way too fast and don't think about the overhead that costs in running a business. So what we just did, guys, we kind of walked through the first two strategies of what it looks like, how to price your product or your service. What I want to do now is, here's a live example. This is a custom t-shirt brand. And we kind of talked about this, but I want to put those numbers into fruition. That way you understand where I'm getting this stuff from. So take a look at it like this. Here's a product cost breakdown. The blank shirt is $6. My printing is $4. Packaging is $1. Transaction fees is $1. And marketing is per shirt. Per dollar per shirt is $2. So total cost, you add up all of those, we get $14. Now here's the pricing formula. Now your margins are going to be different. You got to ask yourself, what are my margins on this? How much money do I want to make? If you don't know how much money you want to make, you need to go back to the drawing board and figure things out. You got to know, like, if I want a 60% margin or 50% margin or 30, whatever your margins is. And your margins are going to differ based off of, what type of product or service you have. For something like this, you probably want a higher margin because the quantity per t-shirt to sell is really low. But if I'm doing like real estate, or if I'm doing big dollar transactions where, my pricing, my breakdown is probably in the hundreds, maybe in the thousands, maybe I take a smaller margin, because I want to make sure I have more business, circulating around. So it all just depends on what type of business you're in. But here's the formula. Let's say I want 60% margin on every t-shirt that I sell. So my price equals cost divided by 1 minus margin. This, I don't want to take you to math class to scare you, but I'm gonna show you some math, right? And this is some math that you can plug and play for your own business. You can take this same equation and plug it in for your business. So my shirt costs $14 product cost divided by 1 minus 0.60, right? And then you do the math, and then you come out to $14 divided by 0.40 equals the $35 retail price. So that same formula, we just plugged and played some numbers. We did the math and we came out to a $35 retail price. So now I take that price and let's get to the profit breakdown. My retail price is at $35. The cost to produce that is $14. So that means I'm getting a $21 profit off a profit margin of 60%. And if I scale the business and I want to sell 21 shirts, I'm looking at 100 shirts, I'm looking at a $2,100 profit. If I'm a young person in college, young person in high school, and I'm starting a t-shirt brand, this is a really good price point. It's not overpriced, for one. It's $35 is very reasonable in today's economy. And it's costing me $14 to make it, and I'm getting a $21 profit. So I'm literally, I'm at the point to where, like, I'm probably making a whole lot off of these shirts. $21 is a whole lot when you think about it. But I'm starting off where I'm just scaling the business, and I'm still leaving some room, because if I make better shirts, that total cost of $14 will go up a little more. A better shirt probably adds $5 more, then I can increase the price. But then, I'm still walking away with about a $21 profit, and it may go up if I change the production of the shirt. But in overall, guys, if you look at this t-shirt breakdown, and let's run through it again. The total cost to produce one single shirt is $14. And I broke it down into the formula where my price equals the cost divided by 1 minus margin. $14 divided by 1, which is 0.60. Remember, where we get the 60% from that's the margin that we want. That's the desired margin. That was just a number I made up for this example. You don't have to have a 60% margin. Remember, your product or your service is different from a t-shirt. So your margins are going to look different. That's up to you to figure out. And what you can do is, if you don't know, I don't know my margin, I don't know how much money I want to make, this example that we have here, figure out how much it costs for you to actually produce your product or your service, and then you plug and play numbers. Maybe you want 40, maybe you want 50, maybe you say, Sebastian, I want to go and get 80% margin. I want to mark up as much margin as I can. You plug and play your numbers, and then you come out with something that's reasonable. But when you're doing this, we always want to be profitable. We don't want to be too greedy where we price ourselves out and we're not making it comfortable enough for our customers. And then you break it down, get your profit breakdown, and then you see how much it is to sell quantities. And then for this example, we did 100 quantities, which is 100 shirts. Next, our next two steps is you want to add margin on purpose, right? Now, this is a common business rule across the board for everybody. It doesn't always, mean the same across, but this is pretty much the average in the economy today for business. The average margin on services is 30 to 50%. I think right now I'm sitting at around 40% of my margin. And I'm there for a reason, because I'm in a critical growth phase and I provide services. Also, I do have a few products that we sell, but we're mainly a service-based business. So my margin is about 40%. That's about the medium price, right? And maybe that goes up, maybe it doesn't, but right now we're about 40%. If I'm doing a product, my product margin is in around 20 to 40%. The example I did, it gave you 60. To be honest, that sounds like a lot on a t-shirt. You may have to revisit it, but at the same time, t-shirt market fluctuates, and things change consistently because fashion changes. So that was just an example, right? So don't take that to heed. And if you're a t-shirt brand, you want to do 60% because maybe the market is not there for you, right? But I just did that as an example. But these two averages that you see is pretty much the average on the market right now. So if you're just starting off, or if you're in business and you don't know where to start off and you've been all over the place and you're trying to start from scratch and you basically start over, factor this in. The service is 30 to 50%. A product is 20 to 40%. Think about it like this. You're not charging for your time. Stop saying I'm charging because this makes me I do this in X amount of time. That's not what you're charging for. You're charging for the value and the positioning of the business. You're charging for the value of your name, but you're also charging to have a foot in the marketplace. What you want to do is on the fourth opportunity, or the fourth step, is you want to test it. Number 3 is adding a margin on purpose. Number 4 is test it. Track it for 30 to 60 days, watch your conversions, and then you want to adjust strategically. The long-term rule is revisit pricing every 2 years. My price today won't be the same tomorrow, just like Fat Joe said. So you want to revisit that price. The price you start with is not the same price you end with. I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to say that again. The price you start with is not the same price you end with. I started my business in 2017. A great example of that is we didn't even have a price at that time. So basically my price was $0. It is now 2026. And per hour, we start off at, not gonna say it for business purposes, but we're in a couple $100 range per hour of what we're doing for our services. And our program has a starting figure at about 4 to 5 figures is what we're looking at, right? And I'm using that as an example because I started off with zero, with no margins, nothing. It took me about 8-9 years to build a business to where I'm comfortable enough to saying, hey, this is what we're charging, this is our quota and this is where we at. And that's because I went through these 4 steps. I evaluated my margins. I tested it out. I took it to the marketplace. I did position the strategy. For me, it took a little longer because I'm a service-based business and I'm in the social entrepreneurship world, the nonprofit world. So the things you do over there, you have to be very careful on how you do things, right? Because at the end of the day, my customer is the greater good of the community, the students and the parents. So for my business model, it looked a whole lot different. It took me longer to get to a point to where I have a menu and a pricing sheet. But for you, if you have a product or you have a different type of service that is more for a profit, you come out the gate with a price. But that price you start with is not the same price that you're going to ultimately end with. So I want to end this episode, guys, with a few action steps. Write down your true cost. I mean, literally write it down. Do not keep saying like, hey, I'm charging $50 and I ask you why, what's the product breakdown? You can't even give me that. Figure out what exactly your true cost is. Go to the drawing board, think about materials, labor, overhead, and then your taxes. What is my true cost? And then you add margin intentionally. Do not be over the top. Don't be too greedy, right? You know, be reasonable, be smart, because you always want to operate your business in the mindset of a customer. Will I buy this for this price? Is it worth this price? Because when we go in stores, I do that all day long. I'm in Target, I'm in places. For example, me and my fiance, we just bought a house, and so we're doing shopping. So we'll go into a store and she'll see something, and I'm like, is it really worth that price? And I get on Amazon, I'm looking around. So, you know, you got to ask yourself in the customer eyes, like, is my pricing reflecting the market? Does it make sense? And then I add my margins intentionally on top of that. And then you want to compare with the market average. What's the average price of a t-shirt? What's the average price of me selling cookies? All right. What's the average price of me providing a service? What's the average price of me recording content at a studio if I own an event space? Get the average price, and then you go to the drawing board, and then you come out with your pricing of your product or your service. Ladies and gentlemen, that's how you price your product or your service. This is Money Mondays. You're tuning in with Sebastian J. Sanders. Guys, like, share, and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you next week on our next episode. And you guys, you know what it is. It's Money Mondays. Scared money doesn't make any money. Follow me on social media. Follow me on Instagram at Sebastian J. Sanders. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Sebastian Sanders. And visit our official website at sandershand.org. Money Mondays.